Thank you, Mary Jo, and thank you, Embark, for inviting me and Onward Transitions into this discussion. And a quick thank you to Liz for being a tech savant here for us. So I appreciate your help with this. Zoom is not my medium, so she's given me a hand with this. So here we are, and I've been asked to give the opening remarks here about telemental health. And I use that term because I find it to be the most specific about what we're talking about doing. Telehealth is a generic term for lots of forms of health, but specifically today, I think we're talking about telemental health and the way we do therapy. And this is really a story about evolution. I mean, programs and organizations in general are evolving. We're watching major companies, churn out PPEs and ventilators. Last week, we got to hear how John Singleton and Jake Weld at their respective programs, Whetstone and Mansfield Hall, are evolving their staffing patterns to meet the needs. And there are plenty of stories of schools like across the country that are evolving to moving to being 100% online. And so that's what this story is. It's about pivoting. So with that, Liz, if we could pivot to the next slide, please. I'll talk about what the goals are for my next however many minutes I get to speak. And please know that there will be time to address some of your questions, and I will make myself available to try to answer some of your specific questions, because this is kind of a generic overview. And it's an educational presentation. So I'm not a lawyer. I am not the ethical body of whatever. I'm a mental health counselor, so I subscribe to AMCA's ethics. We all subscribe to different ethical bodies, and I cannot offer technical advice to you on your specific program. Our platform is G Suite, so I can certainly be helpful in that sense. This will just be an educational kind of survey here. And then I'll move into what I've been asked to share is a case study of Onward Transitions and how we have managed this pivot. And then again, like I said, we'll move on to your questions. So with that, Liz, we'll move to the next slide. And just a note to folks, especially for people who are new to telemental health, it's evidence-based. So 3 particular points that are really important, and that is that the research supports that the alliances that you can form here, the therapeutic rapport and relationship, they can be as good as in-person alliances. And that it also works well with people who have these mild to moderate anxiety and depressive symptoms. That's been my personal experience, and that's kind of my lane that I stay in. That's really who I work with, and I've found that to be anecdotally true to support the research. And I would imagine for a lot of us, that's our umbrella, anxiety and depression. And the other thing that you might find is that accessibility here tends to increase participation. This is an accessible medium, and we're working with a generation of folks who are digital natives, and they're familiar with it. So the hang up might be us. They might be more ready and willing to participate than we're giving them credit for. With that, we'll move to the next slide, which is really just kind of beginning to think about this as a program. And this is for all of you, and I know this is dense, but we'll stay here for a little while. There's really 4 pieces here, 4 core competencies that as a program you need to be aware of. And no one person needs to be the guru of every part. In fact, I would suggest that the first part, you absolutely should farm that out. So for your legal advice, get a HIPAA lawyer. Get somebody on your team who understands telehealth. It's hard to find somebody who specifically understands telemental health, but in terms of telehealth, they're probably working with hospitals and giant practices. And so working with folks like that can really be helpful. I know ours is. And in terms of ethics, I don't know what the makeup of our crowd is today, but I would imagine some folks might be owners or top executives at your programs, and you're managing a lot of different challenges. There's a lot of competition for your attention and the things that you need to tend to keep your community safe and doing quality assurance. What I would recommend is you get your clinical director or somebody like that to be your ethical gatekeeper. Have that person be that objective voice and advocate for ethics as you move forward with implementing your telemental health strategies. Your clinical team, that's where you're going to really need to invest. I'll speak for us clinicians. Sometimes we're all about helping other people change, and sometimes it's hard for us to go through a change. And this is not probably as overwhelming as we're thinking it might be. You can do good clinical work, and you can get help in learning how to do the technical work. It's a shared process, and make sure that part of that clinical process is having someone who can provide good clinical supervision that has a telemental health slant, so that you're talking with people about privacy and informed consent and things like that. And then finally, the technical realm, you do need to have somebody on staff who can do that. Liz is serving that purpose for us today. For us, it's our program director, he's not only a therapist and a tech guy, but he's a millennial. I don't usually add exclamation points on the things that I write, but I had to because it just helps. And you'll also see that there's a note there. Informed consent is really important in all of the clinical work that we do, but it's really, really important for telemental health because technology is going to fail, and that undoubtedly will happen at an inopportune moment, and somebody is going to feel like they've been dissed. And you don't want your clients thinking that they've just been dropped. You want to be able to kind of talk through those contingencies ahead of time and have them prepared that, hey, this is probably going to happen when we're talking about something difficult. And remember that there are other ways that we can get in touch with each other should the tech fail. We'll have contingency plans for that. Shifting again onto this next slide, what's really important as you're going through this process of really figuring out how you're going to implement the legal aspects of telemental health, keep in mind that there are 3 parts to HIPAA. And those 3 parts include, and I'm just going to shrink this down in the way that I keep it organized in my head. So you have privacy, and that's the information. So PHI, I would assume that everybody who's here is a HIPAA covered entity. How you store, how you get that information, or what that information is. And then the next part is the security, how you protect it. So these are the technical pieces that you put in place to keep things stored. And usually that is now done electronically, but it's also about your policies and procedures, and really going through with a fine-tooth comb what your policies and procedures are that help you protect the information that you're sharing. And there are a lot of folks right now who are putting out lots of good drafts and samples out on the internet. We've looked at them and matched them up against ours, and there's good information out there, and it can be really validating, and it can be really educational. So I would really recommend you get out there and check that stuff out. Also, in terms of electronic data exchange, how you share your information, make sure you have a business associate agreement with those companies, with whoever whoever keeps track of your money, if you have a credit card account, and that's how people pay you. But also more importantly, like for us using a telemental health service like G Suite, Google Suite, we use Google Meet, we have a business associate agreement with Google that they are going to have end-to-end security. So we protect it on our end, they protect it on theirs, and it's a closed system. You can't get in unless you go through the proper channels. And then finally, the third part is how you own your mistakes. So having a breach notification policy and procedure, and understanding what the HIPAA laws are for you based on the size of the breach and how many people they had their information exposed. So again, I know that's a quick survey of those things, but I wanted to make sure that that information was out there for folks as we begin to kind of do more of a deeper dive here. With that, I'll move on to the timeline of the case study and getting to Christina's question about, how do folks who haven't had experience with this, how do you get on board? We're really in a different and a really thankful situation in that we've been doing this all along. I've been doing it since I had a private practice, where that was really how I worked with my clients. It was primarily through that. And at that time, there were 3 people in Onward Counseling and Coaching, and we were all pretty foreign to this. We were non-digital natives, and we were using different platforms. Nothing was under the same roof, so it was really clunky and hard to manage, and we learned a lot. We had no breaches, so that was a good thing, but it informed us so that when 2016 came and we opened Onward Transitions, we knew that we wanted to get it all under one roof. We chose G Suite to streamline our platforms. We kept Best Notes, that's the one piece, but our program director is pushing for us to do something different. We're just clinging to that. That's a different discussion. But all of our staff that we've hired, they've really been digital natives, and we haven't really had to do a whole lot to educate them, and we haven't really had to do a whole lot to educate our members, and that's how we refer to our clients at Onward Transitions. They really came in with a whole lot of savvy, and so that really helped us as we moved into this next phase. So the timeline continues on the next slide, and this is how we responded to this COVID crisis. And this is all in the past few weeks. And I'll leave it here for you to kind of see that this can happen fairly quickly, going from talking with your planning team to talking with your full staff about, okay, this is how we need to move forward. This is how we as an organization need to evolve to meet the needs of our stakeholders. And to also begin to prep people for the contingency plans. And when this happens, we're going to do this. And if that falls apart, we're going to pivot and we're going to do this thing. So for us, we informed the staff, we shared all of our contingencies directly with our members, and would really like to, kind of keep everybody updated. And then we had our last day of face-to-face programming, moved to online programming, and we are now running at 50 plus hours of synchronous programming per week. So live, like we're doing right now. And because we were doing what we thought we needed to do with that, we thought it would be enriching to open it up to admissions and allow other folks to join our community. And that's where we've moved to. So the final slide in the time that I've got today is really a SWOT analysis. And this is specific to us. But I think that if you did this with your organization, you might come up with some similarities. The real challenge here is that for some folks, it's a challenge to make a move to going from face-to-face to doing this online, especially for folks with learning disabilities or some major mental illnesses. This might be contraindicated for them. And that's of course a real challenge. But what we saw was there were a lot of strengths to this and some great opportunities. And with that, you'll have an opportunity to look at this slide. And like I said, there'll be time for questions at the end, and you'll know how to reach me if you have other questions. But that's my brief survey. And with that, I hand it over.